A federal court had told Alabama they had to go redraw their districts to include 2 majority black districts. Alabama came back and did not complete the homework assignment, basically, according to this federal court today.
The judges said, we are deeply troubled that the state enacted a map that the state readily admits does not provide the remedy we said federal law requires.
That's right, a panel of 3 federal judges, which by the way includes 2 Donald Trump appointees, has struck down Alabama's congressional map for the 2nd time. Now the panel found that both the initial map and the state's unwillingness to essentially change the map at the court's decision violated the Voting Rights Act by intentionally diluting black voters. Here's how.
The same 3-judge panel that had found that Alabama had likely violated the Voting Rights Act of 1965 by drawing only 1 district where blacks had the opportunity to elect a candidate of their choice. Alabama has 7 districts. 27% of the population is African American, and state legislators only had drawn 1 district where they could have elected a candidate of their choice, and they had in that one particular district. So this special panel had said, go back, redraw it. The state appealed to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court in June, John, had affirmed that 3-judge panel saying, yes, Alabama, you have failed here. You have not abided by the Voting Rights Act, sent it back. Alabama dug in even deeper, saying, no, we don't need to create a second black opportunity or black majority district here.
Just absolutely unbelievable. The state essentially said, no, we're just gonna ignore the federal judges and what they are ordering us to do. And I was curious to see how this was gonna play out. So in their decision, the US Circuit judges said the following: we are not aware of any other case in which a state legislature faced with a federal court order declaring that its electoral plan unlawfully dilutes minority votes and requiring a plan that provides an additional opportunity district responded with a plan that the state concedes does not provide that district. Further, they continue to argue that the law requires the creation of an additional district that affords black Alabamians, like everyone else, a fair and reasonable opportunity to elect candidates of their choice. The 2023 plan plainly fails to do so. Again, I want to reiterate that this court, this panel of 3 judges, includes 2 Trump appointees, 1 Clinton appointee. So look, the silver lining in this story, realistically to me, is the fact that you have 2 Trump appointees actually like upholding the law and the Voting Rights Act. Like, to me, that is the big silver lining here. The question is, what will Alabama state legislature do moving forward? I have some details on that, but before I get to it, Cenk, I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so this is great news on 2 fronts and maybe 3 fronts. The 3rd front is that, hey, there's great news. That's very rare. And so I'll take it and it's fantastic. Okay, the 2 substantive reasons. One, in and of itself, it's definitely the correct decision. The way that it was gerrymandered in Alabama was preposterous. It's actually also preposterous in many other states. A lot of red states, but some blue states too. And so Alabama is not alone in that. Alabama is just alone in how clearly racial it was. And that's why it triggers the Constitution and the protections that come with it. And the second reason why it's great news is what Anna said. It restores our faith in the institutions a tiny bit.
Definitely.
So here are a bunch of conservative judges and justices saying, no, there's 2 things here that you have to do. One is, no, you have to follow the Civil Rights Act, Voting Rights Act, and the United States Constitution. It's not optional. And it doesn't matter if you're really conservative and I'm really conservative, you still have to follow it. And number 2, just the very fact that it was not political and they said you must follow the law and this is the law. It doesn't matter if you disagree with it. And that seems like a really low bar, but these days we're a little worried about clearing that bar.
1000%. No, yeah. Absolutely. Like, that was what stood out to me the most about this story. Like, I don't blame anyone for lacking faith in our institutions. I'm right there on that boat with you. And decisions like this help to little by little restore your faith in our institutions. So I hope that we keep going in this direction. And you mentioned the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is relevant in this story as well. I'll get to them in just a moment. But before I do, it's important to talk about the next step. So what happens now? According to reporting from NPR, for the 2024 elections, the judges have assigned court-appointed experts to draw 3 potential maps that each include 2 districts where black voters have a realistic opportunity of electing their preferred candidate. So those redistricting proposals are due to the court by September 25th. And all sides of this case will be able to challenge the proposals produced by the court's special master. And the judges say that a hearing on this is tentatively set for October 3rd. So we'll see how that plays out. But what's really interesting, and here's where the Supreme Court plays a role. Initially, the state legislatures in Alabama appealed this to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court was like, no, we're gonna go ahead and uphold what the district court has decided here. Apparently that wasn't enough to discourage the state legislature in Alabama, because this is what they said following the latest update from the circuit court. We intend to promptly seek review from the Supreme Court to ensure that the state can use its lawful congressional districts in 2024 and beyond. So they are planning on appealing this to the Supreme Court, which has already essentially slapped them down. So it seems like they're pushing for a losing argument here. We'll see how it plays out, but you can't just ignore the federal courts because you don't like what their decision is.
Yeah, one of our members asked a really good question that I want to address. But first, one other thing about this. I want to be clear, I don't like this system to begin with. I don't think we should have the politicians drawing their own lines. I think that's absurd. I don't like the racial component of it. Now, I want you to understand the historical context of it. The racial component comes from, unfortunately, white people in the South going, we're gonna try to deny the vote to black people as much as possible and the representation as much as possible. That's how it began, there's no question about it, that's a historical fact, okay? And now some of the remedy to that was understandably, well, we've got to create some black districts because you guys squeezed out all the black voters, right? So, but ultimately, in the future, what you would want is something that is not based on race at all, and is based on logical lines where everybody competes, black, white, Republican, Democrat, to actually win over the voters in those equally drawn districts to the best of our abilities. We don't have anything like that in this system. So that we have to reform the entire system completely, but this is the second best option where you're preventing at least cheating within this crooked system to begin with. Now the question was, Moondragon asked, actually on Super Chat, so what are the consequences if Alabama continues to defy this order? Well, see, that's where it gets terrible. Because right now, if Alabama goes, okay, that's interesting, but I'm just not doing it, okay? Well, the courts would eventually say, no, then we're taking you out of this system and we're redrawing the lines, okay? At some point, Alabama courts would do that, the Supreme Court would back them, and they would say, these are the new lines and you must enforce them. And then if local authorities said, we're not going to enforce them, then you would send in the National Guard.
Jeez.
And remember, we've already done that before in American politics and in Alabama. So that's why Eisenhower had to send in the National Guard, because the local authorities said, I don't care about your stupid US Constitution. How many times do I have to rebel against it? No, I don't want to do the Constitution. So we had to send in the National Guard. Now, if a Democrat's president, you send in the National Guard, it's super ugly and sad that it's come to that, but it gets straightened out. If Trump is president, he doesn't send in the National Guard, and Alabama then goes, we're not gonna listen to any of the courts. And then everybody goes, well, if Alabama's not listening to the courts, I'm not listening to the courts. And then what you have is a complete destruction of our system. And it's not a hyperbole to say that.
Apologies if this is a dumb question, but I genuinely don't know. Is it only in the jurisdiction of the President of the United States to call in the National Guard, or would the courts be able to do that?
No, it's the executive branch. The president has to call it in. If the Supreme Court says something that you must definitively do something, and someone like Trump is president and says, I'm not going to, well, you've destroyed our constitutional system. Then the executive branch, who at the end of the day controls what happens in this country and in any country, the guys with the guns. And that is the executive branch. The executive branch controls the military and it controls all of the armed forces, okay? So the executive branch has to respect the legislative branch and judiciary. If they don't, we're no longer a democracy, and the executive branch has taken over and basically turned us into a dictatorship. That is why it cannot be Trump. It cannot be Trump, because Trump will do that next time around. Now he's learned, hey, being subtle about it, asking my guys to riot, doing fake electors, it wasn't enough. They had considered martial law. This time, I would be shocked if he didn't go to martial law. So today's a great day. You know, the conservative justices and judges have done the right thing, and they should be greatly commended for trying to uphold not the system as in the establishment and the corrupt parts of the system, but the system as in the United States Constitution and our democracy. So thank you, conservative judges, for doing that. But their conservatives in the other branches have to also go along with those decisions. Otherwise, we absolutely ruin this country.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.